Hello, everyone. Can you just give me a sign if you can hear me okay, see me okay? Just a sign in the chat would be great. Perfect. Thank you, Noah. Great. Welcome. Let's first do a little meet and greet, and I can already see people sharing who they are in the chat box. So, welcome, Ray. Welcome. Wow, so quite a few people actually from the US, and you must be all early birds. It must be quite early where you are. Perfect. So I'm also really looking forward to this. As I posted in the chat, it's a lecture format, so you'll mostly gonna be seeing me and not each other, unfortunately. But let's make the best of the chat. So. I'll be sharing some content, and if throughout you can share kind of the ideas and questions that spark in you, I will harvest them more towards the end, and then we can hopefully have a discussion using the chat tool. So, brief intro about who I am. My name is Zeynep Meydanoğlu. I'm based in Istanbul, Turkey, and I work for Ashoka with two hats. The first one is I'm the country co-director for the country, for Turkey. And the second one is I'm leading Ashoka's new initiative, Next Now Gender. So I will be talking a lot about that in a minute. Many of you are probably no strangers to Ashoka. We started the social entrepreneurship field about 40 years ago. And then I was going to say 10 years, but about 20 years ago, we also started to learn from the social entrepreneurs we support globally about how to create significant mindset shifts. So that we can transition to an everyone a change maker world where everyone is empowered to create social change and be change makers, basically. And what we learned from our fellows was that that every child must master empathy as early on as possible. And two, every young person should realize that they have the power and that they are already change makers. So we launched two initiatives to this end. And we are kind of pushing these agendas globally in the 93 countries we work. And then about 2 years ago, although we are an issue agnostic organization, so we don't really focus on a given specific social issue, we identified 4 strategic fields where if we can push significant change, we can make a leap towards an everyone a change maker world. And these 4 fields were, the first one was the one we will talk about here today, gender. The others are planet and climate, which I'm sure resonates much with you all as well, technology and humanity, and aging or new longevity. So we have teams across Ashoka working on these 4 fields to create significant change both in the social entrepreneurship field and outside. So I will share actually a little bit about Next Now and a little bit about the research quest we are on, kind of listening deeply to what the world's leading social entrepreneurs have to say about gender and what the opportunities are at the moment in front of us. So I will share my screen just to share a little bit about Next Now. And then I will move on to the emerging insights from this research work. And then hopefully, I don't know how it's gonna work, but hopefully we can have some interaction and discussion through the chat towards the end. So bear with me while I share my screen. Okay, if you're seeing what I'm seeing, you're seeing my screen go to eternity, basically. Hold on. Let me try and make it. Okay. Can you give me a sign if you can see the presentation okay? at the moment? Were you seeing it okay? It's supposed to be a black slide. You don't see the presentation yet. It's infinity screen. Okay. Let me. Okay, I'll try another option. Okay. Can you see it now? Just the black screen with the Next Now logo? Hold on. I need to chat. Yes. Okay. And now it's back to the infinity screen, I guess. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll just look at the presentation myself. So I will not be seeing the chat in the next 5 or 10 minutes. And then I will come back and see what's going on here. So a little short video. Okay, am I back? Sorry about that. Hello. Okay, bear with me. So were you able to see the video at least? Oh no, okay. Okay, I'll share the link afterwards. You were just seeing kind of the intro slide, the flow of the day, and then I disappeared. Oh no, okay, that's a shame. I'll send you the video link. It's on YouTube, so no worries about that. And there are no more videos, so I hope this won't be a problem. I'll just share my screen and go on with the presentation. Hold on. Thank you for being so responsive on the chat, by the way. I don't know what I would do without that. Okay, I'm guessing you can see the screen. So, as the Next Now team, actually, we are trying to help imagine the post-pandemic world, and it's very much in the spirit of the time to think about what needs to change and how we live, how we learn, how we create, how do we become more equitable and caring as societies, and how do we start building that future starting now. So, as Ashokans, we know that social entrepreneurship many of the answers. So, in many ways, the future is already here, but it's just not always evenly distributed yet. So, our part of our goal as Next Now is to amplify these solutions to give them greater voice. So, what the world needs, as we would all agree, is one, we need deep structural change. And many of our problems are quite systemic and intertwined. And we need good leaders driving them, basically, good committed leaders. What we are doing as Ashoka and Next Now is that we are finding the best solution-driven social entrepreneurs, and we are investing early in them. Oh, come. Okay, I got a message from Iman saying I disappeared again. Okay, okay, sorry about that. All right. Okay, so kind of what we do as Ashoka and Next Now is one, finding the social entrepreneurs and connecting them in a peer-to-peer community. Two, actually, there is need for even more connections in today's interconnected world, so that they meet people they would otherwise not meet, experts they would otherwise not talk to. So we are looking for like-minded innovators from across the sectors with whom we can connect this peer-to-peer social entrepreneur community with. And the third one is, of course, the culture of change making, which is like the air we breathe, the water we swim in, that encompasses all around us. So how do we build a culture of change making so that we have a movement of change makers who are ready to tackle any social problem that might come about? And we begin with questions. So for all the 4 fields that we are working on, we are asking questions like how to convert skeptics to become climate allies, or which voices are missing in any given field, or how can people live longer lives with connection and purpose, or how will the future of work look like in a world dominated by tech? And we are very lucky actually to have the Ashoka Fellows who have the proven solutions that work in real life, and to have the general overview on that. And here you're seeing just a few of the gender solutions. So we have social entrepreneurs in places like Chile and South Africa working to redefine masculinity and help men and boys find their place in gender equality. We have social entrepreneurs working on empowering LGBTQ individuals by not just doing rights activism, but also considering economic empowerment, legal empowerment, political representation. We have social entrepreneurs who are broadening the base for gender equality, who are bringing in identities like race, like age, like class into the equation, and showing us how they make a big difference in empowerment work. We have fellows training bystanders, anyone and everyone who can take on street harassment as an issue, because you never know who will be targeted next. We have fellows working in traditional social systems, questioning patriarchy through empowering women leaders. So it's quite diverse and lively, and we are lucky to have this network. So what we are doing in the next 5 years is, the first one is to identify and support. So to make sure we have sufficient number of new innovators, new social entrepreneurs, Ashoka Fellows coming in. For gender, we are hoping to find 50 such new social entrepreneurs in the next 5 years, so 10 each. We are also looking into weaving new powerful networks with them and for them, and also try to help people and institutions who are driving demand in this field to see the new future through their eyes. So what we are learning, the emerging frame change insights from our work so far. Just a recap of how we are listening and learning. So we listed the over 350 Ashoka Fellows. We have close to 400 Ashoka Fellows working on gender-related issues. So we looked at kind of their geographical breakdown. We looked at which areas they focus on the most. We identified which are the geographic hotspots, which are the issue-based hotspots, and then we mapped 135 of these fellows that were recommended by Ashoka teams to see, are there any clusters, are there any fellows bridging different subcategories, which fellows have a strong everyone a change maker perspective in their work, which fellows have visibility and comms power, and so on. And then we started doing in-depth qualitative interviews, each one lasting about an hour to an hour and a half. And we are on a quest currently to complete this with 22 fellows who represent the field. So again, looking at diversity. And also undertaking further research, so keeping up with the press. We have a news brief that comes out every week on what happened around the world related to gender equality. And we also host, are going to start hosting hours to share fellows' insights. So what we are learning from the fellows actually about what is wrong with our current gender order. And here we are at the Get Wiser Summit, where we are celebrating women social entrepreneurs and their impact and leadership. Basically, we kind of asked the fellows, what is wrong with the way gender is ordered? And obviously, how do we make sure actually that it empowers everyone to be a change maker? And the first thing we got was that actually it's a social construct. So basically, yes, there are some natural attributes, but more than 90% of what we have on mind about gender roles and gender stereotypes is actually totally social. And moreover, when we dig deeper, we are seeing that the concept has two very problematic aspects to it. The first one is that it assumes a natural hierarchy, a kind of inferiority and superiority between the sexes, which is quite problematic, as you can imagine, if you want to empower everyone to be a change maker. The second issue is that actually the current gender roles are quite rigid. So there are ideals, there are naturals of for each sex, and oftentimes acting out of this stereotype and role is not celebrated at all. And depending on where you are in the world, in which situation you are, actually there's a culture that that punishes acting outside of one's gender roles. It can be through soft power, being criticized. It can be also, it can go all the way to being subjected to violence. So actually, in many ways, our current gender order is not prescribing who we are and what we have potential for, but how we should be, which is quite limiting, again, from a change-making perspective. The second issue is what is identified as patriarchy. So it follows from the first hierarchy point that actually patriarchy happens to be the major operating system in almost all of our social structures, the family, the school, the company, the country, where it's actually naturalized that the father or the eldest male or the most capable male or the males are the decision makers, and they hold the power, basically. So again, a social construct and a way of operating our systems that leaves almost 80% of the population out of their power and out of the game, basically. So when we talked to the fellows, actually they mentioned 4 problematic dynamics. We often talk about the gender power gap. So what I just described through the patriarchy in the previous slide. But when we dug a bit deeper, we heard fellows also talk about the gender empathy gap. And we had fellows who are not directly in the gender field maybe, but who are working in close relation, like Mary Gordon, who emphasized that we have such rigid gender roles, and through socialization, starting back from when we were little children, there is such an empathy gap to understand what someone with a different gender identity or from a different sex can be going through, and that this makes it almost impossible to connect empathically. And therefore, when we can't connect empathically, we can't push for social change together. So this was one major insight. The other one, you're seeing Tanha, an Ashoka young change maker from Bangladesh who works with the transgender community there. And when we asked her, what is the most important part of your work, she identified her synthesizing trainings, which are very much given to the shopkeepers who employ the trans community, and basically takes them through a journey of empathizing with a transgender person. So this was one level of depth that we gained from the fellow interviews. The other one was more on the systems level, where they highlighted the dysfunctional social systems and decisions. So we had Ala Muhittin, for example, mention that most peace processes actually fail within 5 years, but when you include women, the likelihood to last longer almost doubles. And she highlighted that this wasn't because there was something intrinsic about women, that women carried some kind of torch of wisdom with them or something, but because they reflected the community the solution was supposed to serve better. They were a better informed group because they brought in their life experiences. And this applies to almost any social system you can imagine, be it a company, be it a school, be it a city council. So actually gender equality benefits all of us because it creates better decision-making structures in the end for the entire system. On the social level, something problematic that fellow Emilia Roig identified, for instance, was that actually taking gender alone is not enough. So oftentimes there are class issues, there are race issues, and if we don't synthesize ourselves to these, that we will end up with creating minorities within minorities. So this was also another important to always take into other systems of inequality and how they interact with our current gender order. And the last one was more on the mindset, cultural level, where fellows talked about gender, kind of this patriarchic approach, actually. And many of them mentioned kind of a mindset of scarcity when it comes to power, that power is something you give away, that it diminishes as it gets shared, that it's external to people, that it's transactional, it just changes hands. But yeah, so kind of this understanding of power was also identified very problematic, and it often comes to play with the work of fellows like Dean Peacock, who work with men and boys, and even offenders of violence, for instance, that kind of it's often this limited understanding of power that kind of excludes men and boys from finding their role in gender equality, finding how it benefits them as well, because there is research showing that actually men in gender equal societies commit suicide less, they die of job accidents less, and so on. But it's this kind of fear-based understanding of power that often prevents them from seeing this data. And parallel to these, actually, we can identify kind of 4 big shifts that are happening right now and perhaps have been accelerated with the pandemic. The first one is youth are actually defying these rigid gender norms and, let's say, misbehaving as a joke and expressing themselves more than ever outside of these gender stereotypes. The second one is that new families are emerging. So technology is opening new ways for reproduction, but also the nuclear family is changing quite fast, and there are single parent families, intergenerational families. There are families that function very differently, and this is happening globally everywhere. The third one is that there are women in power positions more than ever before at any time in history. And finally, work is being redefined, and this is perhaps also accelerated with the pandemic, but we are talking more and more of people being treated as whole humans, of skills and areas like care being mentioned as essential work, essential skills. And this is an area where globally 75% of all care workers are women. In some countries, it goes up to 90%. There are informal carers everywhere. So there is more talk about care's value, both economically and for the society more than ever before. So the thing about paradigm changes, as Ashoka and Next Now are after these paradigm changes, is that one, they are here, are new, they are unprecedented, but also you can see its signs budding already. So these four historical shifts that I mentioned are all matching this actually. So there is already care being valued more. There are already new families emerging. There is already the youth acting outside of gender norms and stereotypes and so on. And the second one is they're open-ended enough to leave space for new problems to be solved with it. So they don't pinpoint to a single solution in a single area. And I think, for example, care, putting the value back on care work is such an example where it can open up solutions about employment, how we approach work as a society. It can open up solutions for men who want to do care work and are attracted to it more, and so on. It can open up solutions even for another Next Now field, new longevity, where care is also very, very central. The third one is that it's a win for all players, for everyone, even if they don't see it yet. So, like I said, gender equality being good for everyone, women, girls, boys, men, anyone from any gender identity and so on. However, it's not always perceived that way because sometimes it's seen as a loss of power from one side. And the last one is that they require a collaborative effort and they cannot be achieved by a single player because we're talking about a big system at hand. So following these 4 pointers and looking at what the fellows were telling us in the previous, where it was summarized at a very high level in the previous 2 slides, we are actually from now on focusing on 3 potential paradigm shifts. The first one is from what we can say from rigidity to expansiveness. So how in the old paradigm we talk about rigid gender roles. So people express themselves in a perfectly masculine or perfectly feminine way. And these rigid gender roles and socialization make it very hard to empathize with one another. What the new paradigm could look like is it could be expansive gender roles where actually there are a diversity of gender expressions, people acting out of their assigned gender role are actually welcomed. They don't spark fear, but they spark curiosity and celebration. So just kind of what could the new paradigm look like? The second paradigm could be redefining the family's purpose. So it's not, in the traditional sense, it's not reflecting the patriarchy or current understandings of power, but it's actually a microcosm of a social system where everyone is a change maker. So moving from the traditional social system where only one person or a few people hold power and they perform their gender roles, to a social system where everyone has the power and freedom to create positive change. And the third paradigm, which also excites us very much, is that currently the value of work is not determined on the gender identity of the, is not determined on the, sorry, is determined on the gender identity of the person doing the work. So care and domestic work, for example, don't have much value, monetary value or cultural value, mostly because they are done predominantly by men, by women. And the new actually paradigm could be that we put the value back on work, and kind of the quality and essential nature of work determines this value. And care and domestic work are valued, celebrated, and compensated as they should. So these three paradigms are what we will be digging more into, and we will be specifically interviewing innovators who work within these paradigms in the next months to come, to dive deeper and to see kind of what kind of design principles are they coming up with. And what we can already see is some of the how-tos we are seeing that are used by gender fellows are, the first one is what we can call a public health approach. Many of them work with children and try to kind of prevent instilling gender stereotypes or, for example, something like violence against women from early ages on. So they are taking the public health prevention approach, let's say. We have many, many fellows who are actually working on gender primarily, but at times, because of their strategy, they are putting gender second and making things like race first. So, for example, a fellow working on street harassment, she works mainly on street harassment towards women and LGBTQ individuals, but she doesn't shy away from addressing violence towards Asians or Black Americans, for example. And it's a way of inviting them to the cause. The third thing we are seeing is actually things like family, things like gender roles. Even the smallest changes in our macro narratives, like film industry, like religious discourses, and so on, can make a big difference. So we have quite a lot of fellows working with the Film Academy, working with the Catholic Church, working with imams, and so on, to create this culture change. And the last one we are seeing is we have fellows who succeed in empowering women and girls by making everyone part of the success. So they have found many, many innovative ways of going first to the person who would object to the for example, women and girls going to school or attending a training first, knocking on their door and kind of turning these gatekeepers into allies in many ways. So kind of preparing the community for the empowerment work that's going to happen. But there are many more coming, and we hope to identify these and build cases basically out of them. And our next step is also looking more into the decision-making framework. So like turning the gatekeepers into allies, what kind of incentives are the fellows coming with? What kind of safeguards are they introducing? Are they establishing new information flows so that decisions are made differently? Are they working with new classes of actors that we would otherwise not think of? And what they are doing on the culture, norms, values levels, and so on. So I will actually stop here, and I'm hoping I didn't lose anyone along the way. I'll just stop sharing my screen so I can see the chat. Okay. Okay. I think I'm back, and there has been some chat going on as well. So yeah, if you have any thoughts, any kind of ideas that were sparked by the presentation, any questions, now would be the time to drop them in the chat, and we have about 6 minutes to go, so I will do my best to voice them and answer them. Yeah, so Patricia agrees that caring of the world is in the hands of women. Such a nice, elegant way of putting it. Patricia, thank you. And now more than ever, we need to address the social emotional growth for all. So definitely, I'm happy to hear that kind of our identification that care work is essential, both for gender equality, but also for cultivating the next generation of change makers. And Iman says, Anita Bahita of UN Women yesterday also commented that with the COVID-19 pandemic, the role of women as caretakers has increased as kids stayed home, and violence against women at home also increased. So caretaking is an important issue indeed. So exactly, like I shared in the paradigm shifts, oftentimes the issue is kind of you put your finger on it, but it opens up so many other potential solutions and spillover effects. So thank you for bringing that, Iman, definitely. And of course, the bleak side of the picture is that many women are falling out of the workforce because of care duties at home. So imagine what could happen if actually care work was compensated and valued and visible as it should be. Perfect. So I'm seeing we are about over 20 people here. Yeah, Patricia is wondering what initiatives are taking to make dramatic changes in industries such as marketing, soap operas, TV, movies, where women are still projected as sexual objects and not intellectuals. Very, very. So of course, like we need to work on individual, systemic, and culture level all at once. And the culture level is so essential at the same time. Patricia, I don't know if you've heard of it, but there's a group called Misrepresentation. And there's an institute under the name of Gina Davis, I think. Gina Davis Institute for Representation of Women in Media or something like that. And they do some great work actually. And we also have some fellows working with, for example, the Top Filmmakers Association in Europe or the Academy in the US on these issues. So those might be worth checking out. And yeah, so there was a question by Claire about including boys for gender empowerment. Claire, I'm scrolling back up. Yeah. Yeah, how to get men and boys on board for gender equality. Yeah, this is really interesting because I remember first when the Me Too movement started, immediately after there was a World Economic Forum panel on Me Too, and believe it or not, all the prime ministers and heads of state on that panel were men talking about Me Too. So this is actually a very, very essential, but also very sensitive part of the work. And there is work by actually 3 Ashoka fellows who have advice for organizations working with boys and men on how to involve them best in gender equality. And the number one advice they give them is to follow the women's movement in their countries, actually. So they are saying a good litmus test to understand if the organization is genuinely listening to the women's movement's needs and ask is to see how informed they are. And we also have fellows working on fatherhood, for example, that parenting and fatherhood is often a very good entryway to start talking about gender roles and gender equality, because it's the place where men often feel they are not able to be their whole selves because of masculinity, kind of rigid masculinity and how it's defined. And also it's a place where they can empathize with their daughters and so on. There are also good guides on this, Claire, and I can share it with you afterwards. But basically for organizations, they are saying the key things are to follow the feminist agenda in that country. If they have no idea what women's demands are, then there's something wrong there. And also being extra careful about not giving away decision-making power and voice while involving men in gender equality. So keeping those with the women and kind of involving them as active participants. And I'll share that resource about kind of how to work with men and boys on the field with you afterwards. Yeah, so Man Up, definitely Iman is saying the kind of, there's a movement called Man Up, there's a movement called Man Engage. All are quite good, and we have recently elected 2 fellows working on toxic masculinity, machoism in Mexico and Chile. So it's definitely a trend we are seeing in our search pipeline as well. Yes, so I will send the link to the bio, the presentation, and also the resources I mentioned to Claire, and hopefully she can make sure it gets to everyone. Yeah, I wish it was a more interactive session, but I hope you enjoyed it. It's a taster of we are doing the Now Gender. Share in the chat. The Next Now website is now up, so you can check it out if you want to explore the other fields as well. You'll see there are lots of overlaps with gender and planet, gender and tech, so it's interests you. Social media handles are in profile. You can also keep through this. I thank Claire, the entire YC is together and kind of giving us the venue and bringing us together. And I'll see you later in the day in the upcoming sessions. So thank you very much. Take very good care out there. Bye-bye.